Hi, Alessandro, and welcome to Queer Magic. It's great to have you on the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I know you as actor, performer, and initiate of mine, and also of Janet and Gavin. So really, really delighted to have you on this
Thank you
show.
very much
So
for
yeah, so
inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
cool. It's lovely to have you. So yeah, tell us a bit about you and how long you've been involved in paganism and parts adjacent.
Yeah. So I think that when I was, so we're talking about the 2000s, early 2000s, I started being very much involved into, what shall we call it? Back then, it wasn't, paganism yet. It was sort of connecting to nature. There was a lot of connecting to nature and singing to the moon and dancing under the moon all alone in my garden, and started doing kind of spells and that kind of thing. So it was all kind of a thing that kind of came to me, really. I was never a big reader of paganism or Wicca books up to recently. And I don't know, I was just doing stuff naturally. Well, obviously I'm Italian, so there's that, I guess.
I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, for Italy, there's loads, obviously, there's loads of folk magic in everything we do, even though we might not be aware of it. Most of customs are actually camouflaged as Christian things, or regular things that we do, and but there's basically a spell in it.
I remember visiting one of my visits to Italy. There was a town called San Gemini, and just up the road there was a temple to Castor and Pollux, and I'm like, ooh, I wonder why this town was called San Gemini. Could it be?
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much history in there, and
yeah,
there's lots of that, and anyway, I just did these kind of things without really researching much. It was just something that I felt at that time. I felt I was part of nature, and if there was anything that was divine, it was nature. But because I was part of nature, I was part of the world and universe, then I myself was divine. So it was all about, connecting to this and kind of doing magic together, if that makes sense. It was more of a harmony thing. And then, I started kind of opening up to the rest of the world and other people, doing Wicca and witchcraft and that sorts of things. I kind of met somebody who was actually a friend of mine ages before. And then I met her again, and we started talking about these kind of things. And you know who I'm talking about? I'm talking about Isabella, and she's still one of my best friends in Rome. And we started talking about these things straight away, and it was really weird because obviously neither of us would do that normally. But all of a sudden, it just happened after years and years of not seeing each other. And I was a kid when she last saw me. Actually, she's older than me. Kind of started seeing all these things that other people were doing that were very similar to what I was doing, without me reading in books. And I thought, okay, that's really cool. Clearly that information came to me in another way. But yeah, it kind of expanded all my approach. And then obviously I met Janet Farah and Gavin Bone. I attended their Wicca study groups that they used to do in Italy, which were really cool. So I did those. I was initiated by them. I kept working and training with them at a distance because they live in Ireland. Then 7.5 years ago, I moved to London. I think a couple of years afterwards, I met you, which was amazing as well, obviously. And we started talking about all our approach, and which was very similar, and also everything about inclusivity sounded really cool, and it resonated a lot with what I was kind of thinking anyway. So then obviously I entered your cabin, and yeah, that's more or less a summary of my path.
That's pretty good. Yeah. So yeah, obviously, yeah, tell us a bit about your position on the queer landscape, so to speak.
I would define myself as a gay man, but I think it's more complicated than that. I think that's just a label that we use, and the labels are useful because they help us understand better with our rational brain what we are dealing with. But I do think that sexuality and gender is probably more of a spectrum rather than a black and white duality. So I would say I would describe myself as a gay man because in my experience, that's what I would be most comfortable with.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily exclude anything in my future. So yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I like to think of it as a landscape because that like spectrum, two-dimensional. Let's have a three-dimensional thing.
Yeah, like that. Like landscape. Yeah, true.
And it also avoids using the word identity, which can be problematic as well. So there you go. So yeah, the next question was how accommodating or affirming or inclusive is your tradition of that, and obviously it includes Janet and Gavin's stuff as well as anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah. So very inclusive. Is my practice is very inclusive, and so is my tradition, or traditions, shall we say? I don't know. I mean, I think that everything pertains to witchcraft, and everything that is witchcraft to me is my approach to reality, and has to do with healing and expansion of consciousness, I guess. So everything I did, being part of Jonathan Gavin's tradition, which is called Temple of Kaliak, but actually we founded it. When we were initiated, we were a group of us Italian initiate. We decided to create this tradition, and we called it like that. So that's a progressive tradition.
Yeah.
So there's already that approach, inclusive approach in there anyway.
Yeah.
And obviously with you, same thing, being in the Ghanaian Whitecroft line, but specifically I would say in our line, and specifically from you, we started working much more on inclusivity, more than I had in the past, and that's what resonated with me so much, actually. Whereas witchcraft per se, if you think about Italian witchery, or just witchcraft in general, there's no, that it resonated so much with me, probably inclusivity, because for my background, I was a solitary witch or wizard or warlock or whatever for about 10 years. And there's no relevance to gender. It's not like it didn't matter the fact that I was a man, because I was obviously solitary, but it's still not something that for me, it's not polarity and all the concept about being man and a woman. That's not something that I would relate to magic necessarily. You can if you want to, but it's not like a central focus, Yeah,
so, and interesting. I mean, it was never really a central focus for me until I wrote the first book on inclusive Wicca, and people were like, ooh, but what's about the polarity? And I'm like, well, what about polarity?
Yes.
No one's mentioned it in a circle ever that I've ever been
I
to.
don't
So
know.
like, what's the big deal?
All of a sudden it became a central focus for many people, but then that's the confusion. I think many people think now that it is the central focus of Wicca because some people are so loud about it.
Yeah.
But I think most of the people that I know, they don't really mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it very odd that I mean, I don't know where that kind of came from, but I think apart from there's the thing of like this sort of idea that, I mean, I honestly think it just comes from homophobia. I can't really.
It is sort of a homophobic approach.
Yeah,
Just
I
don't
mean,
realize it is. It's
like
one of those
suddenly
things.
this thing that wasn't very important is now suddenly really important.
Yeah. But it's not homophobic because we're welcoming gay people now.
Yeah.
Great.
Like,
well done.
Yeah.
For treating everybody the same. But that I think it's more than that you want to. I mean, maybe for me it's just natural because again, coming from my background, it's just natural. Having to think about the gender of the people that I deal with is just something that's limiting.
Yeah.
We can't do it. If we want to work on a specific, I don't know, like some sort of ritual where somebody acts the role of a goddess and the other one of a nymph and a satyr, maybe you might want to say, okay, I'm gonna do, the man is going to be the satyr and the woman is going to be the nymph.
Yeah. Well, I have a particular ritual where I basically make everybody play something that's not their gender.
And that's really cool, actually. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Well. Actually, you know what you're reminding me?
It's basically an excuse so I get to play Robin Hood.
Actually, you're reminding me of a game that I did once. It was actually a show. I was part of an interactive show in Edinburgh, and they called me on. Well, they didn't call me. I volunteered because I have lots of fun doing these things. And they were doing basically team girls against team boys, but they picked some girls for the team girls and boys for the boys. But then they also wanted one or two people of the opposite gender to join. And I joined the girls.
Hey.
And it was so fun because you could see, and it was so interesting as an experiment. We all noticed, it was so evident that everybody who was doing the cross gender, the other gender, including me, obviously. Well, obviously I'm also an actor, but anyway, also the other girl who was doing the boy. You could tell that we were freer, as in we were less uncomfortable because, being a boy who has to be a boy, it's you're there with all your ideas of what you should look like on stage. I don't know what to do, whereas tell me be like a girl and do something like a girl, and it was obviously a comedy, so it was it was very light and it was fun, and it was very easy to be something different than what I look like, And
Yeah.
it was nice, it was cool, and everybody enjoyed it so much.
That's
Both
ace.
for me
Awesome.
and the other girl who was the boy in the team boys, So that's interesting, isn't it?
That's very interesting. It is. I went to see a performance of Henry V, where they'd made all the male characters played by women and all the female characters played by men. And there's a sort of sexual harassment scene in Henry V. And it was really interesting seeing it played the other way. It's very good.
Wow. I wish I'd seen that now.
Yeah, it was really good. Before I knew you, unfortunately. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd have said, hey, Alessandro, come to this thing.
Totally. I would have loved to see it.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
Yeah. So, I mean, to circle back to your question, how inclusive is my tradition or my practice? I think I try and make it as inclusive as possible. And for me, inclusive means not just say, obviously, everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
Because that's like the very basic of it. That's, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like it's no good saying, hey, I have gay people in my coven, and then not actually changing anything and carrying on with the same old heterocentric stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the thing, you know, being so, I think in witchcraft, not even Wicca, you know, in witchcraft even, you have to find, you know, it's a unique path for you. You have to find your path. What's your purpose? What do you want to do? What is it that you want to work with? What kind of energy? It's about you for me, especially witchcraft. Because Wicca is more complicated because it's a group thing, isn't it? Mainly.
Yeah. So you have to come at some sort of consensus as what is our group about, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, because for me, the witchcraft is so strong in my approach. It's really important that everybody, even in Wicca, they know, you know, you are a witch. You are a witch.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even though you're Wicca, you're a witch, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a witch, then a witch is somebody who steps out of the boundaries, lingers in liminality, does what is not allowed to do, is
transgressing.
Is forced to do something that can't be done in any other way. So to protect people, you know, she or he will, or they will do something in another way. That's the idea. You know, you travel, you know, a number of things that you can do. But anyway, that's the point, you know. So you have to find your thing, which might take forever, or might not. You might not. But that's the point for me. So the point is not anything that has to do with gender polarity.
Yeah. Well, like, you know, as
so especially when it's heteronormative, it's just you're not doing anything special there. You know, maybe you were back in the days in the 60s when, you know, homosexuality was illegal and you know, having Puritanism not so far away in time, so having all these people.
Yeah, I mean, in the 50s and 60s, having a woman at the center of everything was really radical. Sure.
Exactly.
But now it's like, okay, great. So, and celebrating sexuality was radical, but you know, if we're going to celebrate sexuality, let's celebrate all of it.
Exactly.
And as you and I have previously discussed, I don't believe that polarity is made by male and female, because I don't think male and female are opposite to each other. And you know, you did that brilliant workshop where we got everybody to think about, are these things polarity? And you made a big list of opposites, and then people suggested more, and we were like, okay, is that polarity? Yes. And then we went through the list, and then I think I can't remember if male and female were on the list, but I think the room concluded that they were not in fact a polarity.
I mean, yes, the whole point of that workshop, I did it a couple of times, and the whole point was to make people reflect on the fact that the sheer concept of duality, like like just two, it doesn't actually exist in nature.
Yeah, basically. It's very true.
There are some things that you can think of maybe, but if you really think about it, you will find always something in between. You will find a different point of view that will change it.
Well, I remember my high priestess told me that polarity is always a spectrum, and duality is like the idea of two poles. That's two separate things, which are separate from each other. So her point was that polarity is always on a spectrum. So for instance, if you have hot and cold, there's lots of relative positions between hot and cold, which was the point you were making in your workshop.
Exactly. The same thing is just used wrong. You know, when people say
completely.
Like duality is not the same thing. And the way duality doesn't exist in nature anyway.
Too right, it doesn't.
I mean, there are some things, as I said, but it's not the only thing. You know, it's not like the universe wasn't born from a penis and a vagina, guys. I'm sorry. It was born inside a star, maybe. I don't know.
Yes.
To do with our genitals at all.
I think people get confused by the name the Big Bang.
Yeah. I know, they got confused. I was like, oh, there's
Yeah.
something there, quite kinky. I don't know,
Yes.
right? I'm sure. But yeah, definitely hot.
Yes.
But yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah, polarity is silly. Yeah.
I mean,
Or at least saying that male and female are a polarity is silly.
It's silly using it like that.
Yeah.
You can make polarity out of anything.
Yeah.
As you know.
Well, that was the point of my series of workshops, was to say, hey guys, you can make polarity out of anything you want, including famously Marmite and chocolate. So
Marmite and chocolate, of course.
yes.
But also morning people and evening people, which I love particularly as well.
Yeah, that one works really well. Because Marmite and chocolate doesn't really work in an international context, whereas morning and evening does.
Indeed.
So yeah, the fact that I'm a bit bleary-eyed because it's the morning demonstrates that, in fact, I am an evening person.
I suppose that, in fact, in Italy, you could probably do a lot of polarity having to do with food, you know, like savory or sweet.
Oh yeah.
Or you know,
that's a good one.
pasta or risotto, or you know, that kind of thing.
I love it.
I think it would work really well in Italy, actually. I just thought about it.
Yeah, savory and sweet. I like it.
Yeah,
that's good. That's and you could have salt and sour aren't as opposite to each other, but you could get a multiplicity in there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It really depends, you know, what you want to do. And let's not forget that obviously you can make magic out of resonance as well, not just polarity. So you don't have to have a pair of opposites or different poles to make magic. You can make magic out of resonance, having two same kind of poles, kind of energies.
Yeah, like two guitar strings going and making a chord. Yes.
Indeed.
Yes, and synergy, which is where you have multiple people.
When you have a group of people.
Yes, which is, I think, that's what we do most of the time in the craft, because when you're raising energy, it's people dancing around. That's synergy. There's no polarity going on at all.
Or when when you meet up with a friend and you just start talking, and it's, you know, like a best friend, somebody who you really, you know, can talk for hours with.
Yeah.
You know, you're making resonance, aren't you, there?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know, because you're both, you know, maybe you reason in a similar way, but you inspire things. That stuff happens, you know, when you do that. You don't necessarily have to have somebody who thinks opposite of you to. Yeah.
You spark ideas off of each other.
Ideas, you know, it could be that it works, but it doesn't have to be the only way. You know, this is the thing in witchcraft for me. Everything that it becomes, you know, you have to do that doesn't work. You know, I always think, I'm always a bit, you know, weary of, because I always like, how do you know? You know, have you tried every possibilities in the world?
Yeah. No? Just try more stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
If I try something and it works, there you go. That's it. It works.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, that's how traditions get started, right? You go, okay, we did this thing and it worked, and so now we're going to do it again.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's such a complicated thing. It's such a complicated or a complex topic, because obviously one thing is about this. So, okay, so one thing is about the core of witchcraft, or what it means to you, and all that. The other is about consent and respect, you know, because that's the thing. You want to respect everybody's sexuality. You don't want to whitewash deities because you're more comfortable with that specific image. You know, you want to try and find a way to be as inclusive as possible in that kind of sense, because it's just you know, human. I think it's just the way it should be.
Yeah, human and humane. Yes.
I was thinking humane, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know.
Yes. The thing is, we're all human beings with our unique perspective on things, and if you don't include people's unique perspective, then you're losing out.
That's exactly what I was thinking. You know, you miss out if you don't. You know, yeah, it's so sad. You know, when you meet somebody who's been he's been burned by the craft for
Mm.
whatever reasons, because he's been told that he can't be in Wicca or in witchcraft because he's gay,
Yeah.
or whatever, whatever the reason is, you know, or because maybe they have a disability, or maybe they don't have a disability, but maybe, you know, they're not comfortable with dancing the whole time. So perhaps you can't dance every single time and the whole time that you have a sabbath or a ritual together.
Yeah, it makes me
So
dizzy, so
you
not going to
can't
happen in my
you
circle.
can't do it because that's pivotal, you know.
Yeah.
And you're like, aren't you, you know, first of all, no, that's not nice to, you know, to do that. Like, try and
Yeah.
find a way to make it work. But if you really can't, it doesn't work for you, that's fine, obviously. You know, but be specific, explain. Don't say to somebody, oh, you can't do witchcraft or
Yeah.
Wicca because you
You
can't
might,
dance.
it's more, you might want to find a coven that can accommodate you rather than, you know, it's
Exactly.
like this whole
What I
business
did, you
about
know,
working
when,
skyclad. Like, not every coven works skyclad.
yeah,
So if
exactly.
somebody really, really
When
can't work skyclad for some reason.
when somebody was training with me, and I could sense that it wasn't the right group, but at some point they got there, and they said, you know, I was absolutely fine, and I offered to help to find a better suit. You know, that's what you do. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, well, you know, F off.
Yeah. No, I've done that. I've gone like, okay, so this, I mean, usually the person realizes for themselves that it's not working for them for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You know, I had one person years and years and years ago who didn't actually like our approach to magic, and so ended up going and doing something else. And fair play to them, you know. At least they realized.
Exactly. That's
And
fine. I think that's very important. You know, and one of the things that I always say is that people have been really important in my journey, and I think people are probably important for everyone in this kind of journey, especially if you're not a solitary witch. I think it's important to meet the right people, and the people who you meet will in some way shape your training and your path. That's the thing, you know. It's not, I mean, at least this is my experience. Like, for me, I will choose a path, and I will choose a, you know, a group instead of another, also because I like the people, because I feel comfortable with those people.
Yeah.
You know, if I really want to study a specific tradition, for example, or train in a specific tradition, but then I go there and everybody I meet I don't like or I don't feel comfortable with, but then I find another tradition which sounds okay, I quite like it, and I like the people, I would probably choose the second one.
Yeah, it makes sense, because if, I mean, usually one likes people because, apart from because you kind of hit it off with them in some way, it's usually because you actually share the values, which implies that the second group is walking their talk, and there's something wrong with the first group because it's not walking its talk. So
yeah, it could be that, or you know, or it could just be that what you said before, you know, that you've got, you know, maybe their approach I don't feel resonate with, because maybe I like people, but then I look at what they do and I'm like, I don't know, you know, I'm not convinced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I'm still friends with the person in question, so there you go. Yeah, I mean, I remember when you first rang up to inquire about our group, and I think we ended up chatting on the phone for about 2 hours, and I thought, well, that's a good sign.
I think it was more than 2 hours.
Yeah, it was a long phone call, I know that.
I think it was maybe 3, I don't know.
Yeah, well, obviously I lost count, so that's a good sign too. But
yes.
you know, obviously we hit it off.
Yeah, that was a good sign. That's what I thought. Well, it's like, okay, well, we get along. That's good.
Definitely. Yes.
Yeah,
it was really cool. So yeah, talking of being inclusive, I think you did a rather interesting survey recently that you wanted to tell us about.
Yes. I obviously I think that same-sex and same-gender initiations are absolutely fine. If not, they should be, you know, normal as everything else is. If you feel comfortable with me and you train with me and you like me and you want to be initiated by me, it doesn't matter what gender you are. I don't care, and you shouldn't care either, I think.
Absolutely. Like, back in the day, people didn't, you know, like pre-Wiccan witchcraft, nobody cared. Ceremonial magic, nobody cared. Why do we care? Why does Wicca care?
All of a
I mean,
sudden,
I
we
don't care,
so much.
but why does Wicca care about it?
I don't know.
I don't get it.
And then they don't, because I mean, this has been done so much.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, it's happened.
Not Jonathan Gavin, Jonathan Stewart did initiations, same-sex initiation. I don't know what years they were. This at least the 80s, I think, and maybe the 70s. I don't know. People have been doing them for years now, for loads of time.
Absolutely. I mean, I know of people who did them in the 90s.
Yeah.
So like that's 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah. So that's part of the tradition now.
Yeah, it should be.
People will like it, some people won't.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. This is the other thing about Wicca, that I think, for me, the fact that it's so diverse in its views, it's actually it's a good thing. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Because Wicca is about witchcraft, which is about us coming together as witches, connection to nature. We're all different, aren't we? So it's only normal that we're challenging something in our mind, a certain scheme, society's structure, if you like, and you might come out with a certain idea, coming up with a certain idea, or coming up with a different idea. That's okay. I mean, as long as you don't kind of, bust my jewels, everything's fine.
Yeah, I just think when people want to say, okay, our coven doesn't do this thing, but go to that coven down the road because they do that thing, and like if somebody came to me wanting massively heterocentric Wicca, I'd be like, oh well, go join that coven over there. So I would hope that if somebody came to a massively heterocentric coven and wasn't a good fit, then they'd go, oh, go join that inclusive coven over there, rather than saying, oh no, inclusive Wicca is not valid.
Okay, so the survey.
Yes, tell us about the survey, Alessandro.
I ran this survey in a Facebook group for Ghanaian and Alexandrian initiates. The two questions of the survey were: would you accept same-sex initiation as valid Ghanaian or Alexandrian initiation? And would you do same-sex initiation if requested to? 95 people voted.
That's a good sample.
55 voted yes, both. They would both see it as valid and they would do it.
Awesome.
27 people said, I wouldn't do it myself, but I would accept it as valid. And 13 people voted no.
For both? Yeah, obviously for both. Yeah.
Both, yes.
Yeah. So that's only 30. That's less than 13% because it was out of 95 people. So it's about 11% or something.
It's 14% according to my calculations.
Right. Okay. I can't do math at this time in the morning, obviously.
It's actually, so you've got 58% yes, both, 28% I wouldn't do it, but I would see it as I would accept it as valid, and 14% saying no, which means that the two yeses, the two 58% plus the 28%, is in total 86% of people who accept same-sex initiation as valid.
There you go. Then I think that's. I mean, the thing is, I think.
Now,
I'm just gonna be picky here, right? And I'm gonna say, is there something particularly progressive about the membership of that group, or do you think that group is kind of representative?
Maybe. It could be, obviously it might be, because obviously it's all down to people who they invite in their groups, I guess. But it wasn't specifically, it wasn't an inclusive Wicca group.
No, indeed. So,
and that's why I ran it over there.
Absolutely, because obviously you'd get 100% in the inclusive discussion group.
Because I did have a sense anyway that we were all like, oh, you can't do it, you can't say it, you can't do it, but actually in the end, everybody was kind of fine with it.
Yeah.
Actually, now it's being pointed out to me that group has over 400 members and only 95 voted. Okay. But that to me says it's food for thought as well, because it means that roughly 300 people chose not to say anything.
Yeah. What does that mean?
What does that mean? You know,
Yeah.
it's still
Well, it could also be that the Facebook algorithm just hid the post from them or something. I mean,
it could be that. It could be, yeah, many people, maybe they didn't even see it, or they're not on Facebook anymore, or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, the point of that survey for me was to make people realize that you can do stuff if you think that it's bad.
I mean, I got a pretty similar result when I did the Inclusive Wicker survey some years ago, and lots of people who are much more sociologically savvy than me criticized the methodology. So I said, well, great, you do your own, and they still haven't. But you know, come on, people, we need scientific data here. But that is such an encouraging result, isn't it? I mean,
helps, exactly, because people see it and they see the numbers, and then everybody was like, oh, okay, well, because, you know, after a few days of people commenting and voting, I was like, I'm not gonna say anything. I just kind of kept it going, and then after a few days I went, okay guys, so these are the stats, just so you know, bye. And people were like, okay, wow, I didn't realize that, you know. And it's like, what's the point, you know? That's, you know, think about it, you know.
It's very encouraging.
Going, oh, I'm fine with it, I'm fine with it, but I'm not sure if I would do it, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, most of the time people don't want to do it because they think, will my initiate be accepted in gathers if I do it? And, you know, is my initiate going to get flack? Am I going to get flack? So the only way to actually get anywhere is to do these kind of surveys and go, okay, so what is the actual support for this? Because, you know, I've done initiations where we did it as a kind of a mixed thing. So, you know, Bob and I did it together. So the person was getting half a same-sex initiation. Yeah, and I'd like to just be able to go, yes, right, let's just do it. And because I'm tired of having to say to people, well, you know, if you want a same-sex initiation, I'll do it, but I have to warn you that there will be flack. So if I can say to people, okay, I can do this, and, you know, there is a tiny minority of people who might give you flack, but did you really want to circle with them anyway? That would be much better.
That's the point, isn't it?
And that is the point.
Again, it's yes, because again, it's about your journey. It's not about their journey. It's not about groups where you can get together with hundreds of strangers who live in a completely different area and might not ever see it again. If you don't want to, you won't see them again anyway. That's not the point, you know. You shouldn't pretend to be something different because so you get to meet many friends.
Yeah,
that's really odd, you know. It's equivalent.
It's kind of strange. I mean, I love going to gathers because I love being in a place with hundreds of other witches, but I love
gathers.
Yeah,
gathers are lovely, but I think it's important that you bring yourself to the gather.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not going to go to a gather and say, well, you know,
I'm only half here.
Yes, I'm really a bit different actually. But it's fine. You know, I'll do whatever you guys do so that we're all on the same page here.
Yeah.
This is the thing that is not fair, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why we want to do
everybody with the privilege.
Yeah.
And in this case is the people who keep going with these kind of attitudes. They should wonder these questions. They should say to themselves, how do we include those people who don't feel included in that kind of sense? Yes, I'm gay. I might be included because I'm gay and everybody's fine with it. Great, amazing.
But if the ritual is still heterocentric, you know, stuff, then you still feel kind of like
but even going beyond that, you know, we can even go further and say, you know, because for me, again, yes, there's sexuality if you like, but there's also lots of magic you can do that doesn't got nothing
absolutely.
You know, so I always find it a bit funny when people always trying to work sexuality or gender polarity or that kind of thing, always in stuff that has got nothing to do with it.
Yes.
You know,
Yes,
so
that's
that
true.
to me also is inclusivity, you know, inclusive of everybody's point of view in your coven. You
Yeah.
know, not just, okay, the leaders thinks this, so everybody else must think like the leader think.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, one of the things that excludes me from rituals at gathers, as well as two things. One is that they quite often happen after 10 p.m. And I, you know, although I say I'm a night owl, I don't actually want to do a ritual in the middle of the night. You know, I'd rather do it earlier in the evening and then sit around chatting. And the other is that I really can't abide drumming. And I have to say, this is because white people can't drum. Well, the majority of white people can't drum. So,
yes. Yeah, well, I mean,
it's a disaster.
Yeah, I know, but that's exactly what I mean. You know, inclusivity means all of these things.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
It's not like, oh, that's fine, Yvonne. You can come if you like. If you don't want to come, don't worry. Okay, that's not exactly being inclusive. That's
No, indeed, it's not. And I can honestly think of gathers I've been to where I haven't been to any of the rituals because of this. So, and then another one was I went to a ritual and I missed the announcement where they said, if you don't want to be smeared with body paint as you enter the ritual, do this.
Yes.
And so I went in and I got smeared with body paint. And I actually discovered that I really, really didn't want to be. I didn't know until the very moment after it happened that this was actually deeply unpleasant to me and I didn't want it. And I had to leave the ritual because I had to get clean. So whereas if they'd just said that, well, there was a waiting period in the hall, and they could have said, oh, if you don't want body paint, just do this, right? Because we were all stood about in the hall and they could have announced it again, and they didn't. So I left the ritual and went and had a shower.
Yeah, look, I mean, the thing is, again, it's down to what I was saying before, the people, you know. Okay, do you want to go to gathers? Okay, so that's the path you do if you want to go to gather, you know. But to me, witchcraft is about you, first of all. It's about nature, it's about the planet maybe, but you know, it's definitely about you. It can't not be about you. And you know, you have to do this journey. You have to find stuff inside you. You have to find the way you connect to everything. If you don't do that bit, you're never going to connect to everything. You're never going to know what's beyond the veil or whatever it is that you want to do anyway. It's just something that starts with you. So what you really want to focus on, thank you. Thank you, Alessandro. Is that you've got, both in witchcraft and in Wicca, for me, the core should be you and maybe the people who are the closest to you.
Yeah.
You know, so basically your coven. So that's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
The most important thing is you are comfortable with those people. You get along. They help you grow. You help them grow. You do stuff for each other if needed. You learn together. You do the training together, or you do whatever you want to do together. You want to explore something together, you do. Whatever you do there, nobody outside of the coven can say that's wrong or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's, as long as you're in the group and it works, whatever it is, call it Wicca, call it witchcraft, call it, you know, something completely different. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is it works for you and you're going somewhere with your path. And then, you know, the gather or you know, or guesting with other covens or whatever is the next step, you know, and hence really cool, because it's really cool to go to a place where there are lots of people like you. It's nice. It's a nice feeling, isn't it? And it's nice to meet more people that you can discuss with and you can ritual with, but they will always be less important than your coven and than you.
Yeah.
If you catch my drift,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
absolutely. I think that's true. And I think
I think it's important that you find you're truthful to yourself, So
yeah.
if you feel this is what I need, this is what I want, then then do that.
Yeah.
If you train with, if you're a woman and you train with a high priestess because she's amazing and she hasn't got a high priest, or he left, or whatever, what, you're not going to be initiated because there's no man doing it?
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
No,
I mean,
it's crazy. Or they call another man in, but that's also a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I always felt that my initiation came from, although it was officially done by a man brought in from outside, and no disrespect to him, I've always felt that the energy came through my high priestess,
Sure.
So I feel that
obviously, and it's fine. I would give him the choice, because knowing the circumstances, I will always give them the choice and say, hey, look, this is how the things are, and depending on what you want to do, totally fine. If you want me to call a woman because you're a man, we can do that. That's fine. I will always and meet what you want to do. It's completely up to the person, to the candidate. But to me, thinking about myself, I would just always think about, why would I choose to do it with a stranger? Rather than
right?
a stranger, even if it were somebody that I didn't meet and I liked them, or liked her, I guess in this case. But still, the person that I'm most related to, or most close to, and that I want to further the magic with, if you like, is that person. The person who trained me is my
absolutely. That's
directly,
the thing.
It's not something else.
Yeah.
It's only natural, I think.
I think so. And it should be the person you feel the most connection with, whichever that one is.
Exactly.
And especially at second degree, where that's you can get away with doing first degree as a kind of a mixed effort. It's a lot harder at second, I think. So
yes,
it makes a lot of sense. So do you have a favorite book on queer paganism, Wicca, witchcraft?
All your books.
Oh,
I loved Inclusive Wicca, All Acts of Love and Pleasure, which I read obviously when I met you, and then I wanted to read it because I started because I wasn't much of a reader, as I said. I was always a very practical person. I feel something and I do it. I feel a connection to a person and I do it. We do something together. Okay, does it work? Does it not work? I think a lot about what I'm doing. Does it work, etc. So I'm very practical. I don't tend to read loads of books on this thing. That was always my weakness, I guess, because I could have obviously get to know so many different things and traditions and philosophies and amazing points of view in the world by now. But yeah, it might be because I've got a sort of a ADHD brain, so I tend not to be a great reader. My brain tends to get distracted. Yes, so when I started training with you in your coven, then I wanted to read your book because it was like, everything is amazing. I really love this. So I read your book and it was so good. And today, even though I love your recent books as well, I still always recommend that book to everyone.
Thank you.
Inclusive Wicca, because I think it's not just about inclusivity. Is such a complete book on everything, on Wicca and everything that's related, that it's really good. There's such a lot of good stuff in there that people don't realize, even philosophical stuff that you don't normally necessarily read in Wiccan or pagan books. So I think it's just a really great book.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Aside to audience, I did not pay Alessandro to recommend my books.
Yeah, well, I'm not even sure how much of a endorsement this is, considering I said I don't read that much anyway.
Well, the fact that you actually overcame that to read my book is a compliment.
Oh, I did, yeah. It was such a good book, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yes. So, yes. Do you have? This is a tricky one. Do you have a definition of queer magic?
I love this question. It's so difficult. Okay, so I mentioned before that the witch is somebody who works and stands in liminality. I mean, queer, if you think about the word queer, again, you've got that kind of energy as well, don't you? So I suppose queer magic, because it could be anything, you know, it could have to do with queer people, but also not. You know, so queer magic could be really any sort of magic that you do where you cross a big boundary, and you learn to live in liminality, you know, to live, stay on that border rather than crossing and stay, you know, to the other side. This is about maybe crossing back and forth and see what happens, you know, and then maybe slow down and try and see if you can catch anything there, because it's kind of impossible for us, you know, this is the thing. It's impossible for our human rational brain we need labels, we need spaces, we need black and white colors, spaces to choose, you know, are you a man, are you a gay man, are you a priest, are you a priestess, you know, do you do Wicca, are you Alexandrian, are you Gardnerian, are you this, are you that, you know, are you an actor, are you I don't know, a software developer, we need that, but that's our rational brain, you know, whereas our emotion, the magic really exists anywhere. It doesn't have to be labeled and to be boxed somewhere. So I suppose, yeah, queer magic, it would be some sort of, it's magic that you can do by crossing boundaries and learning to be comfortable with liminality.
I like that a lot. That's really good. Yeah, for me it's to do with liminality too, and I think it's about that, it's sort of thinking outside the box in a way as well, isn't it?
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know, again, it's what we were saying before, you don't go into a ritual and, oh, that's, you know, that's also why I tend to say to people, you know, when I do training or you know, in any ritual, I would not necessarily all the time do the same frame of ritual and start it the same way or finish it the same way. I like that I've got a kind of a diverse background, you know, from Italian witchcraft, my own things, but for healing, because I'm a healer as well. I do astral traveling a lot. I do all sorts of things like that. It's quite shamanic from this point of view, I guess. And obviously I've got Gardnerian, and I've got Tempio di Calia, or the Jonathan Gavin line anyway. But all this, I try to, it's not like, oh, I'm going to do it that way, or I'm going to do it that way, or I'm going to do it this way. Because it's odd. I'm all of these things. So, of course I can, you know, if somebody asks me, can you do me a classic Tempio di Calia ritual, or a classic Gardnerian ritual? Okay, you know, I can do that. I guess I'd have to understand what they mean. Yes, you know, but for me, and I know you agree on this, tradition is a flow. So, you know, even saying a classic Gardnerian ritual, again, it's like, what do you mean? Like,
yeah,
is it
tricky?
You know, do you want it how Gardner did it, or you know, it's so tricky, especially because even within the initiates, there's still so many differences anyway. You go to a coven and you go, oh, you do it, you know, you say those words at the end, I say them at the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's all, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like I've been to lots of different Gardnerian rituals and they are all different, you know, and you can tell, like, okay, this person is downline of that person because they use that.
Yeah, and that's quite cool, you know.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a cool
Why not?
thing. I love that. I love diversity. It's great.
Yeah,
it's great that you can go to another coven or to another people, ritual with them, and see, oh wow, I like that, you know, and you do that, you know. Cool. It's nice. I suppose that is polarity in a way, you know, because I
Mm.
bring my way of doing things, you bring yours.
Yeah. I
As long
mean,
as,
you
you know,
could see the ultimate polarity as like self and other. So,
yes,
well, it's
definitely.
the one that we first become aware of. So
Very
yeah,
sage.
absolutely. So yeah, tell us a bit about your acting.
Well, I suppose one thing I can say is that, well, I'm an actor and an acting coach as well. I suppose one thing I can say is that I'm realizing, I guess, because it's an ongoing journey, but there is a connection between acting and you know, that craft and this craft. And again, is about the self, and what you just said, you know, self and other. I guess it's about that polarity. It's about transforming into somebody else. For me, acting was always about. I was always fascinated by actors who could move me and upset me or fascinate me, you know. And I'm not a big fan of just simple kind of entertainment. It's fun, obviously. You can do that, and it's great. But for me, what I always wanted to work on was always finding the truth, finding who am I, what kind of things can I do. I want to do every roles, you know. I want to transform, like literally when somebody looks at me has to think I'm somebody else, I'm not me, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like I was watching your acting videos on Instagram and I completely forgot it was you.
Ah, good. There you go.
And just was lost in the moment of the thing. So
oh, amazing. That's great. Good to know. Yeah, I mean, you know, I like that. I like to try and I dive into the character whenever I see an actor who. That's also why I became an acting coach, because I trained with an acting coach for 2 years, and she said to me, "You could do this," and I was like, "Yeah, maybe I would one day," you know. And then 10 years after that, I was like, "Yes, maybe I'll try." And whenever I see an actor who does something, they're not completely believing in it, you know. It's just maybe technique. But I can tell because I can feel it even, you know. You can tell that they're thinking about, okay, I'm going to say this line now so that I can do that, you know, and I can tell. So if I can tell, you know, either you're so good with your technique that I can't tell, then okay, good. But if I notice, then that's something I would like to work on. I always worked on true emotions. I don't think that the actor is somebody who pretends. I think the actor can be very real on stage or on camera. They can be. They can
I mean,
be.
it's that thing where somebody does
reality.
there's a thing where somebody does the special acting voice, and you know they're doing the special acting voice.
You mean like this?
Yeah. Well, it's sort of it's part. Sometimes it's to do with the script because the script is written in such a way.
Yeah, no, I know what
that
you
mean. You can't avoid using the special acting voice.
No.
And
sometimes it just works for you. I know.
Yeah, and then sometimes, but sometimes it's the actor like doing the special voice, and it's like no normal person would speak like that. So
sometimes it happens, you know, and when you meet another actor and all of a sudden you're like, what do you do? I'm an actor. Oh, me too. Hi, how are you? All of a sudden, I can speak properly. Hi.
So there's a really good send up of it in the 18th century Blackadder, because the 18th century acting style was particularly bad for this, apparently. You had to kind of stand there with your legs apart going rah. But yes, so one of the things that really stood out for me about your videos was that it sounded like a normal person talking and not the special acting voice. So
that's what I always try to achieve. I don't, you know, it has to feel natural. It has to feel to speak to you. You know, it doesn't speak to you if I'm doing something like that. You know, it has to be something that speaks to you, that you know you would do in your life, or you would see somebody doing that thing.
Absolutely.
If you see somebody being vulnerable, which you don't regularly see in your life that easily, You know, so the vulnerability of the actor, how you're able to portray it, that's a really powerful tool, and it's really difficult to achieve it, of course.
Yeah.
But everything has to do with truth and your consciousness as well, you know, in a way, because you have to use all of your brain and energy to transform into something else. You have to believe in the imaginary circumstances.
Yes.
The way that a friend of mine put it recently is that he asked, you know, the question was, because we do this weekly clubhouse meeting at the moment, and we always have a different topic. And a couple of weeks ago, the question was very philosophical. I love philosophical questions. And I said, does the actor lie, or are they always truthful? So is it truth or lie being an actor, right? There was this big discussion, and this friend of mine who always works with me at the Strasbourg campus, my school, she said, well, I think that technique and everything that has to do with the circumstances are false. They're not real, but the emotion is truthful, is real.
Yeah.
And I quite like that, you know. It's an interesting take, you know, because that's it, you know, you see something and you know everything is not real, you know, but because the emotion is real and whatever's going on feels real, then everything else is real as well for you that you're watching, you know.
Yeah, like that one you did with the angry character, and I was like, I'm scared now.
Yeah, there you go. Good. Yes.
Yeah, it was great.
You.
Yeah, I also remember that workshop you did about acting in ritual. That was really good.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are different things that you can apply. You know, I struggled to find the connection between the two things for a long time. I was always like, yeah, you know, you can, yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a technique. I suppose, you know, it's about the way you use your voice, the way you use your body, and they're all obviously good things to know. And yeah, I mean, if you don't have acting training, of course, it will help you.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, the core of my acting is the emotion and the way that I work on truth, on the concept of truth, you know. So it's such a big concept, isn't it? It's such a powerful thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm working on you know, maybe devising some interesting exercises in the future for ritual.
Yeah. Well, I loved that one you did. I thought it was really helpful because it made me think about how I perform in ritual in a different way. So that was very helpful.
I'm glad.
Yes.
It was helpful then. That's good.
Definitely. So this is the bit of the video where you get to plug anything you want to plug, like your Instagram or...
I don't really have anything to plug. I just came because it's nice to chat to you. You know, I'm an actor. My actual stage name is Alessandro. So there's that website, obviously, and the school. But you know,
yeah. Any budding actors out there, check it out because
thank you. Yes, I mean, yeah, there's that. There's the Strasbourg campus, my school, of the Strasbourg method in London, and at the moment we're also doing online courses, obviously, because of everything that's going on in the world. But yeah, I mean, yeah, apart from that, you know, I don't really advertise myself that much online or anything, especially I mean, not as an actor, I mean, obviously as a pagan or as a
I think everyone should check out your acting videos though, because they're awesome.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, there's the Instagram, obviously. Yes, so if you search Alexander Ananasso, you'll find that. Yeah.
Cool.
That's all.
And anything else you'd like to add?
It's been lovely being here. Thank you for having me. I mean, this kind of, I would talk for hours about these things, about inclusivity, but also about witchcraft in general, about Wicca. So, you know, you just have to find, I don't even know what you need to find, but you know, it's just it's nice to be here and talk to you. So thanks for having me, I guess. Yes. And thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Available.
Yes, it's been lovely as always. So just tell everybody to check out your stuff, and keep watching Queer Magic, because we've got lots of interviews and a couple of videos on inclusivity and a potted history of queer magic. And thanks for watching. See you next time.
Bye.